The husband and wife themselves need to have a sense of responsibility, and that sense of maturity and responsibility will only come when you are disciplined, when you are strict on yourself. So many times you have young boys, I'm not so sure of the girls, but I can talk for the boys. You have young boys who have their friends, they sit with their friends up to 12 at night and 2 in the morning. Then a few years later they get married. And when they get married, they still find themselves making the same time for their friends. That is prohibited, completely prohibited. How can a person who has now taken somebody's daughter still give preference to his friends over his own wife? And this is a sickness that many people are guilty of. The time that you spend with your spouse is an act of worship in Islam. The time that you spend with your family members is an act of worship in Islam. Many people just sit and give preference to a newspaper over their family members. It's a fact. The man comes home from work, he is tired, he does not speak to anyone, he sits down, he wants to eat his food. So next thing he is busy reading the paper, or he literally plants himself in front of the television and he is watching the television until late hours, then he switches it off and goes to sleep. He hasn't spoken to his wife, he hasn't spoken to his children. If any one of us here are guilty of that, today is the day you are being told directly that that is a major sin. Major sin. How can you give preference to a television over real people? Real people. If you are not going to give due attention to your wife, who do you want her to get that from? That's a question. Many people are guilty of not spending lighter moments even with their own wives. Where do they want that wife to go and get that from? It is true, and we need to talk about it, because it's a fact of life. They are too embarrassed to mention what is going on. And that is the beginning of the problem. Imagine the children that come out of such a relationship. What warped upbringing will they have? What type of a relation will there be between parent and child when the parent-parent relation is non-existent? So many people are guilty of not understanding that they have taken someone's daughter with the name of Allah. That do you know that 90% of your problems are caused by the tongue? 90% of any human being's problems are caused by the tongue. So Allah is saying, watch out, be careful how you use that tongue of yours, especially in marriage. The question I have, how many of us utter words to make our spouses feel good? How many of us utter words to put a smile on the faces of our spouses on a daily basis? I think a lot of us are guilty of never doing that, or doing it very little. Every single day it would be an act of worship for myself and yourselves to say a few words to make your spouse smile, both male and female. An act of worship. If we don't do that, we will have a hollow society. Outwardly, everything seems to be okay. Inside, nothing is okay. And people are suffering in silence. Why do we need people to suffer in silence? We don't. No one needs to suffer.